Lil Jay can't diss nothing. His took dick in his
BossTop recently picked up the mic on his Instagram Live to talk about Lil Jay getting out of prison. Let's just say for now that he really didn't have the best stuff to say about him. Lil Jay had a pretty storied history in the Chicago gang culture. A lot of that ends up making it so that he really doesn't have many people to turn to. Just who is Lil Jay, and why does BossTop immediately want problems? Lil Jay was coming up in the game around the time Chief Keef's career first started taking off. While most people think of Lil Jay as a Gangster Disciple, he actually grew up in BD territory. Eventually, though, he moved down by 63rd, which we know from King Von's Crazy Story is absolutely GD territory. At that point, he started kicking it with the likes of FBG Duck, Tooka, and tons of other infamous GDs. He started talking to 600 about joining since he had always been around BDs for most of his life. Unfortunately, the higher-ups in 600 really didn't like the people he had been hanging around with. As a result, he officially became a member of the insane Gangster Disciples. He joined Jaro City while also linking up with STL EBT. All these crews are in firm opposition to the 300, 600, and Lamron gangs. He got so close with everyone that eventually he would crash with Duck and get into the studio with Duck and others. Of course, since he had basically all but abandoned his old crew, he made some enemies pretty quickly. I'm sure that since he had previous ties to the BDs, it was pretty difficult to earn the trust of the GDs he was hanging around. This is around the same time that Lil Jay reportedly caught his first body. Of course, we gotta point out that this is speculation, and technically, by law, Lil Jay isn't guilty of the crime. Around 2011, Lil Jay was involved in a historic hit. Unfortunately, it's also one of the darkest moments in Chicago history. He most likely wasn't the one who did it, and while a lot of people think he was there, we still don't know for sure. Anyway, this event was the death of none other than Odie Perry. Odie Perry is the kid that O-Block is named after. Odie was the older cousin of who else but BossTop. There are all sorts of rumors even to this day about who actually caused the death of Odie. Most people say it was members of STL EBT, while other people claim they had nothing to do with it. A lot of people think that it was FBG Duck and KI. Another piece of lore that can't really be proven is that Odie was actually gotten rid of as revenge for the death of Tooka, especially since Odie died on Tooka's birthday. Either way, since Lil Jay started hanging out with FBG Duck and KI, there's a really good chance he was there when Odie died. Lil Jay was running around with a dude from Tookaville named Lil B. No, not the wonton soup Lil B. We know who you're thinking of. Anyway, Lil Jay and his homie ran up on an RMG member named Levon. He wasn't about to just hand off all his cash, so he ran to his car with the quickness. Unfortunately, he wasn't quite fast enough. Instead, he caught a couple of shots in the back. No one knows exactly who took the shot, but it was enough for Lil Jay to gain a little bit of clout as the hitter. Eventually, Lil Jay and FBG Duck started to gain some steam in the music scene, releasing a track called Critical, which even went so far as to call Chief Keef out right as he started to blow up. The lyrics really didn't try to hide their target, like, at all. It's not a sneak diss, I'ma say your name, Chief Keef, you a poop stain, you a peon, you a lame. Talking about Tooka gang, that's the wrong decision. For 2-2, we trigger happy, we good precision. And we all 600K, scream D-thing. You would think we was some bloods from Compton the way we bang. I'm Lil Jay, you already know me. Sending shots at your homies, screaming Odie. Shout out number 3, yeah, he said it first. How the you a chief if you ain't putting in work, bitch? Not only does Lil Jay absolutely go in on this verse right at Chief Keef, but in terms of calling people out, he's really not pulling any punches. I mean, he also calls out D-Thang, Lil Durk's older brother. 600K means 600 killers. Aside from that, they also diss Odie, which is basically on the level of smoking on the Tooka pack. While FBG Duck and Lil Jay were steady putting out hard-hitting disses, sometimes that doesn't really work out in your favor. We unfortunately saw that happen in FBG Duck's case. Eventually, it caught up with him. He ended up having problems with 600, obviously, but he also had beef with Lil Bibby from NLMB. Shortly after his raps started to gain traction, everyone closed in on him at once. He got shot 9 times in the leg and his neck, but miraculously survived. Apparently, though, somebody really wanted him gone. More people ended up sending shots at him for a total of 15 bullets this man's body has seen. He somehow managed to recover again, but it seemed like he really didn't learn anything from either of these experiences. This is when academics started calling him the Chirac Wolverine. It seemed that he didn't reconsider a couple of things though, because it wasn't long before he started messing with Brick Squad, who was unfortunately having problems with his old crew, Jaro City. Things kind of settled in general for Lil Jay for a while, but that probably didn't actually help him out in the long run either, because it just so happens that Lil Jay started causing problems with FBG. This move would absolutely come back to haunt him later on. Lil Jay must have been on some hard times, or maybe he just didn't know how to handle himself. Anyway, it turns out that Lil Jay had been stealing from FBG Duck and other members of the crew. He ended up getting his hands on a little bit of money and some jewelry. When FBG found out about it, they pretty much decided it was time to cut Lil Jay off. I guess it's good he had been making friends in other places. Of course, as a result, you already know they had to lay a smackdown on Lil Jay for the disrespect. They beat him up to get back the chain he stole, and of course, to knock his sense of respect for his homies back into the dude. Pretty much came to the point where Lil Jay knew that there was really nowhere to turn. Maybe that's why he decided to start his own crew, called We the Ops. FBG Butter and a Blood from Out of Town also joined. This sequence of decisions would basically end up spelling the downfall of Lil Jay. When he was finally done paying for the mistakes he made, he would return to a world that completely changed. This is where Jay the Kid enters the picture. Jay, Butter, Rashida Young, Monique Lane Calhoun, and Brittany would all be arrested after the events of this night, but all of them still got off without a scratch compared to the person they recruited. His name was Filmon Rizzini. Rizzini and Jay the Kid got into an altercation when a deal on some smoke got botched. Eventually, Butter and Lil Jay dashed back to the car to grab their pieces and jump into the fray. But by the end of it, Rizzini would be dead, and Jay the Kid was injured with multiple wounds. Jay the Kid got off on self-defense since everybody came back with weapons, but Lil Jay and Butter weren't so lucky. Lil Jay ended up in prison for 14 years, and since he had made so many enemies, ops were all over the place. So were some old friends who didn't quite see eye to eye. Another problem is that Jay was expecting his homies over at FBG to call and see how he was doing, or at the very least put some money towards his bail. Unfortunately, you don't get treated like that after you've been snaking on your own dudes. FBG basically left him high and dry. To make matters worse, there were rumors that Butter snitched. The whole thing about Butter snitching is complicated because there's really only circumstantial evidence to prove anything happened. The whole speculation came from photo of Butter in the interrogation room looking over some paperwork that got leaked. While most people who wouldn't really think much of it, when the ops get a hold of it, they did their best to make it look like WDO was falling apart. That being said, it probably didn't really look good that Butter ended up getting released before Lil Jay did. At the end of the day, we really don't know what happened in jail. We do know, however, that a lot of the old homies Butter used to roll with really don't mess with him anymore. Eventually, Lil Jay beat the big charge, but still got hit with the 14 years for conspiracy. When he finally got out, he didn't really get the warm welcome he wanted. BossTop was one of the first dudes to make sure he knew that he thought he had lost any sort of street cred. Now, we really know that BossTop is an op for Lil Jay, so we wouldn't really expect any celebration. That being said, BossTop decided to take the disrespect to a whole other level on an Instagram Live. BossTop made all sorts of claims on Lil Jay's name. There's no way this man was about to show any sense of decorum to Lil Jay. BossTop started off by making some wild claims about Lil Jay. We don't want to get too bold here with any of this, but BossTop basically said that Lil Jay was gay. He said he did some stuff in jail. First of all, we gotta say that really doesn't matter. It's not really talked about, but there are tons of LGBTQ people in the streets, even if it's not really talked about. People like Young M.A. are working to make that more commonplace, and I don't think anybody's about to claim that, isn't hard. He also made some more serious claims about how Lil Jay reportedly decided to get himself in protected custody, which is not something you do if you claim you're from the streets. PC is where they put you if you're a designated target for other inmates. And to be honest, Lil Jay was. He ran into tons of trouble with ops in prison. That being said, you don't really do that. Now, people like 6ix9ine and Soulja Boy are some notable examples of people who have famously been in protective custody. But if you got a rep to protect, you really don't want people knowing you had the COs put you away so you can't settle your beef and stand on your own business. At this point, it's difficult to tell exactly what civilian life is going to look like for Lil Jay. It's not like he could run to FBG Duck at this point, because he died while Jay was in prison. Aside from that, even the dude he really used to run with right before he got locked away might have snitched on him. Where do you go? All he really has is the possibility that one of his crew he used to run with will accept him with open arms. That being said, the cold reality here is that no one knows him. He doesn't know anybody. He was locked away from society for 14 years. The dudes that are still around might as well be considered OGs, if they're still even around. Most of the new kids on the block are probably teenagers, and there's no way they care how he's doing. If anything, Lil Jay's story serves as a warning. You can't just be snaking on dudes left and right like that. If you do, don't expect anyone to be there for you when you put your time in. Just don't work that way, man. Now everybody's the ops, and all your friends are gone. It's a little depressing, to be honest. On the bright side, Lil Jay actually was able to reach out to FBG Duck very shortly before he died, and it sounds like the two of them were able to work everything out. That may be true, but where does Lil Jay go from there? Is he about to hit up old FBG crew and figure out where he fits in from there? Or is he maybe gonna try and reignite his old rap career? Either way, it's gonna be a tough road. What do you think about it though? Is BossTop right to be dissing Lil Jay, or has the dude already had hard enough? Does Lil Jay get another shot of life, or is it most likely that nobody really cares what the dude's up to? Let us know what you're thinking in the comments. Don't forget to keep it RIZZLE. If you like this story, you're for sure gonna want to make sure you peep this story next.